Do you have tons of backgrounds because we just couldn't wait to try the latest and greatest technique, and now they sit in unmade handfuls in your stash? Today, let me show you something really simple to do with them to get some stunning results. Let's get crafting. This is just a small stack of my backgrounds, and backgrounds are probably one of the most underused craft supplies in my craft room. What about yours? We've already invested time into making them, maybe trying out a new technique, or maybe it's just a roll-off from a gel print. But we've also invested some form of craft supply. That is truly ugly. We're not doing anything with that. First one, I'm taking this really busy pattern that was a stencil, and I'm going to be using the Spellbinders 3D embossing folder called Dimensional Diamonds. And I wanted something rather simple, but I'm going to go ahead and spritz the back of that cardstock and go ahead and run it through my Spellbinders Platinum 6 embossing and die cutting machine. Now, when I took this out, the first thing I thought was, well, the texture is good, but it's still too much. So I'm going to go ahead and use a sanding block and sand off the top parts of those diamonds. And you're going to want to turn your paper, turn the sanding block, and just give it a gentle rub to get rid of some of the color. Now, I know that there's quite a bit of white on this one, but we're going to add more by sanding away that I think it's ink. I'm not even sure how I made that background. That's how old it is. I remember the stencil, but not the technique. And I didn't really care for it. So here I am thinking, oh my, this is not going to work out. But as you can see, the diamond pattern is starting to come to the forefront and the pattern is moving to the back. And just wait, because we're going to make this look something special. A super bold background to a rather demure and subtle background. This one is going to be zhuzhed up with this Autumn Serenade 3D embossing folder. Now I am spritzing the back of my cardstock. The reason for that is to loosen up the fibers and keep the cardstock from cracking. I use very thin cardstock for my layers. This is 65-pound weight cardstock. And, well, it has a tendency to crack. But when you loosen up the fibers, less so. So I've run it through my Spellbinders, and look at how pretty that is. Not something I normally would have picked, but it still turns out rather beautiful. I'm going to go ahead and use my sanding block on the leaves and kind of get rid of some of that color, but it keeps the leaves in the front. So that's what your eye is drawn to when you sand away some of that color. The color shrinks into the background. And I really like this one. This background is literally just from mopping up leftover ink on my glass board. That's it. It was nothing special, but it's going to make a special card. Now this last background is from a paper scraps video that I did quite a while ago, and is nothing more than leftover paper scraps attached to a card front. But I'm going to use Simon Hurley and Spellbinders 3D embossing folder. This one's called Geo Quilt, and it's very geometric. Instead of lining it up straight, which doesn't always work out so well for me, I went ahead and just threw it in there cockeyed, and well, I really like this one. Running it through the embossing folder really adheres that paper. And then I went ahead and used my sanding tool to go ahead and rub off some of the pink cardstock on the stripes. The white there was no need to do, but the stripes I went ahead and rubbed those off. So here's my backgrounds. I have cut them down just a little bit. And now I need to figure out what to do with them. And I'm going to use most of the stuff that I already have prepared. And this makes getting these 3 cards out really fast. Now this is my binder that I keep a lot of my cut up sentiments, my sentiment strips, maybe some die cuts, some colored items, and I'm just going to kind of go through here. These are all kept in little baseball pocket cards, and it's kind of like just going shopping. I'm just going to stroll through the aisles of my sentiment book and pick out something that will work. Now, this Black Thanks is going to go very nicely with this card, and we're going to move on to the next one. Now this one is still really, really bold, so I need something to bring it back, and I'm thinking white. That's going to kind of knock it back, but I'm looking for a sentiment first. Wishing you a day that's as sweet as you are. And I found my image. Well, I think I found my image. Still a little busy, but I'm going to set it off to the side and keep looking as I take in the third card. So it's right about here that I realized that the image that I selected for the second card will work much, much better on this third card. So we're going to go back to the very bold card and continue looking. Having lots of ready-made things makes cards like this come together rather quickly. Now this is a gold Celebrate, and I do like this, but it still kind of gets lost in the background, but I like the gold. So I'm going to turn on a dime here and change it out just a little bit. Now I've selected a banner. This one says Celebrate. Obviously it stands out better. I like it, but I still liked the gold. So now I just have to decide which way do I want it. I tend to like top folding cards, but let's find out what happens. The sentiment selected, I am going back to my handy dandy swatch chart. Now this one is for all my distress oxides, and I'm just holding the card up to see which color I want for a layer. I didn't want to add additional layers to the card. I want it to be easy to mail and not cost me extra postage. And in my head, Stormy Skies was where I was heading. But then it just kind of fell flat. So I'm going to go with Uncharted Mariner. I'm going to open up my top folding card, line it off with a piece of mint tape that has a temporary home on the top of my Spellbinders Platinum 6. That tape is reusable for quite some time. I find that if you leave it not stuck to something, it loses its stick quality. So I just adhere it to the top of my Spellbinders, and when I'm ready to use it, I take it off and it works just as it did when it first came off the roll. So I'm just going to ink blend some, yes, look, that's going to really give that the pop of color that it needs, because it is a demure background, very subtle. But the Uncharted Mariner, boy, that's just a beautiful, beautiful color. Right about here, I'm realizing, Wendy, you have ink all over the place, so I need to fix that. I figured a piece of copy paper to protect my surface, and well, then I realized that's still going to get ink on the back of my cardstock, which I didn't want. So I just fold that copy paper around my card and continue with my ink blending. I'm not doing anything major here. I'm not really worried about the ink blending. It does kind of dry back and soften up a little bit. So there's no real harsh lines. I just want to get some on. There's no point in doing the whole thing because the card panel is going to cover most of it. I just wanted a little pop of color around the outside without adding that extra bulk. Now I'm just going to quickly tidy up my glass board, set that aside to dry, and we're going to go ahead and move on to assembling the other cards. Now you can certainly use whatever adhesive you like, but my preference is Bearly Arts Precision Craft Glue. It's pretty much all I use at all anymore. I do have double stick tape, I have tape runners, I have foam tape, but it's just not my go-to. I really like the wiggle room of the Spellbinders, the Bearly Arts glue, and I'm just going to go ahead and line that up on my card base. I use Accent Opaque 100-pound card for my card bases. All my layers tend to be Recollections brand 65-pound weight cardstock. Now I need to see where I want my little lady here, and she's so cute. I know one of my subscribers, Daria, I think it was you, that told me where this stamp set came from. I have an incomplete stamp set that I bought at as a bundle from an estate sale, and I think these stamps are just adorable. And when I don't have anything to do or I find no inspiration anywhere, I stamp out a bunch of them and sit in front of the television and color. I'm not a great colorist, but I just do what I like. I don't worry about the shadowing or any of that nature. I've cut out a little banner edge for my sentiment just by cutting into the center and then angling my scissors into the center from each corner. That one's done. An acrylic block holds down my images to go ahead and give it an opportunity to dry. I'm bouncing back to this really bold pattern, and I just couldn't get that gold out of my head. But the Celebrate just wasn't enough. So I selected a banner style stamped Celebrate, and I'm going to go ahead and adhere this onto my card base. And I've die cut a gold wildflower out of just some matte gold metallic cardstock. This is the Tim Holtz Vault Wildflowers, which I absolutely love this die set. And it's going to break it up just a little bit and just give me just enough pizzazz to, once again, tone down that background along with the Celebrate. I did bring out some, I told you I had some foam tape for the Celebrate. And of course I'm going to add some glue because I want a little wiggle room. And there we go. So this one is pretty much done and dusted. With my last card base done, I'm just going to go ahead and quickly add the card panel to my background. And in retrospect, I probably should have added maybe some picked raspberry to the edges of the striped card with the little girl on it. Probably would have made it pop more, but I'm still very pleased with how it turned out. I've just glued on my thanks sentiment, and I'm going to go ahead and finish that up with just a little bit of bling. These are really old teal sequins. They're probably 40 years old, so I may as well use them. So dig out some of those old backgrounds, dig out some of your old supplies, and run them through with an embossing folder and add a little sanded texture to the top to remove some of the color. In the comments below, why don't you let me know which one of the 3 cards is your favorite? I think I'm going to pick this thank you card as mine for today, but they all were super quick to come together. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please consider checking out another of my videos that I've selected for you right here. Until next time, I'll see you real soon.